Hi, welcome to Kitchen Chats. I am your host, Aimee Kandrac, and today I have the privilege of welcoming Phillip Sheppard to join me today via Zoom. Phillip is quite the podcaster, and more than that, Phillip has been on the hit TV show Survivor. Phillip is an Army military vet. He is the father of a son who is in the military. He is a successful businessman, an author of a wonderful book, and he is joining me today so that we can discuss ways to help friends and loved ones who are serving in the military. Phillip, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Aimee.
I'm excited to dive in. You have such a fascinating background, and I find it such a privilege to talk with you. As we get started talking about supporting people in the military, I have to say I have cousins in the military and I have friends who are in the military, but I really don't know the best way to support them when unless they're coming back and I know of like a typical need that they might have. Like they're moving home or they're having a baby or they have a medical crisis. But I know there are really specific things that happen when someone is deployed or just living far away in a base. And I don't even know where to start.
Well, for myself, I'm from a military family. I'm one of
Mm-hmm.
12 brothers and sisters, 7 girls, 5 boys, and several of the boys served in the service. And my one of my elder sisters also was a captain. She's a nurse
Wow.
in the Army Reserve. And so, and my father served 24 years in the military from World War II through Korea and a snippet of the Vietnam. Right at the beginning of it, he retired.
Wow.
So we have that experience in our background.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll tell you about initially when I went into service in the 1980s,
Mm-hmm.
being from a very large and extended family, what helped me was the communication initially. Because when you first go into basic training, they have something called, and I'm going to take you through different stages
Please.
of the person being in the service. So initially, they go to something called basic training, where they're going to
Mm-hmm.
learn basics about being a soldier and also get their body and their mind ready to serve in a military environment. And through that, they have something called mail call. So they'll have either someone acting as what they call the student first sergeant, which is what I was. They have a real first sergeant. But if you show that you have some leadership capability, they'll put
Mm-hmm.
you out front and that you march the guys to chow. But at the same time, they'll have something called mail call. And this is really when family, extended friends, those who love you, care about you, can communicate with you and write you letters, kind of keep you abreast of what's happening back at home. If there was something that you might have shared musically that was going on, I remember when I was in, Michael Jackson's Thriller broke, and I'm way
Uh-huh.
over 30 at the time, just left basic and, was sent over there. So it was
So,
helpful for
oh, I'm
people
sorry.
to communicate with me and let me know what was happening.
Right. So, question though, now, in the 80s, email was not around. Are
Right.
you allowed currently to send an email to someone and it can get printed out and given to the soldier, or is it still handwritten USPS?
Well, there's still going to do, there is email, and guys
Okay.
do have cell phones today, but there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing you and I will know like a well-written letter.
Right.
My preference, my elder sister is a brilliant writer and
Mm-hmm.
psychologist and all that. And so when I was in the service, and even when I did Survivor has, even though we have cell phones, they have a day where they allow you to get letters from back home from all your friends and family, and you get to read them, and the tears flow. And people
Oh.
who are fans of the show see that. Let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you, it happens also during basic, not where they cry, but you have a deep emotions when you hear that letter that came in either from a loved one, a girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
a family members, friends of yours who write to you. So I think that's a key thing that when they're in the service throughout their career, if you can, yeah, email's great, but it's like everybody, we get tons of email, you get limited time. And a letter is something you can feel. I still like reading books, right? I still
Right.
read digital books when I'm really super busy, but I like the feel of a book. And as you know, self-indulgence here, I've published books. And so I
Yes.
I do them as ebooks, but I also like people to be able to read those books. So I think it's fundamentally important that you write to them. You can send them care packages. When they were in basic, we would send them candy, goodies, something that we know on the list that we've been sent back home that they can get. And so
Okay.
I believe, throughout that whole journey, the 8 weeks that they're in basic, a few letters from different people for mail call, because there's nothing more depressing for a soldier, let me just say that, when they hear
Mm.
other people's names called and their
Hmm.
name is never called. A lot of times guys go in there with just a single mother who raised them. And then they went
Right.
into service 19, 18, 20 years old. And their friends think they're kind of silly, some of them, that you're going into service, man. Why you want to do that? There's, why you want to, my son faced some of that. And he was an
Okay.
artist. So I hope
Yeah.
that
Well,
covers.
and one thing that I love about the letter and the care package, and I'm making some assumptions here, right? When you're in basic, you're not like interacting with people as you would have previously, but you are now touching something that they touched, right? And it's just a really personal connection that you can't get with email.
That's right. That's exactly right. And even if you know the writing style, the print,
Hmm.
the little sherry that they've said with you, you get to read it over. You fold it up.
Hmm.
We've all seen movies back in the day where that soldier's like, "Give me back that letter," or the guy
Uh-huh.
the letter from the girlfriend or whatever. Those are precious moments. So that's one thing you can do
Hmm.
when you're in the service. So writing letters. Also, I think it's important, like when the holidays come, it may not seem obvious to some, but whatever you can do, uh, because different people are different economically. But for me, for example, I send my son care packages where
Hmm.
he'll have fruits or his favorite goodies. I don't deliver them. I don't package. I do them online, and he gets a couple of those.
Sure.
If I know that's something that he would really enjoy, something he missed when he was at home. He can
Hmm.
buy all that stuff for himself right now, right? But it's just letting him know. I do use text messaging a lot with him to check in, see how he's doing. If I don't hear from him, he still gets a little bit of mail here, so I communicate that way. So I really think communication is, to me, number one. That you are
Number
not
one.
forgotten. You are loved. I still say, "I love you, son. I love you too, Dad." So he's 29. He's turning 30 this year, but I
Oh,
still, yeah,
congratulations.
I don't wear that out with him. Make him, but
Hmm.
I let him know that the love is still there, and um, and I remind him that I care about him deeply. You
Right.
know, when we have those conversations, this seems very simple and fundamental, but when you ask me, how do we care about our soldiers and how we care about our veterans? Um, Let me know if I'm jumping ahead. Am I jumping ahead?
No, I was going to just ask you. Actually, I do want to ask you a quick question, though. As the dad, is it helpful for me to remind you how much we appreciate that you are supporting your son who's going through this? So, thank you for that. Thank you for keeping his morale high and reminding him that he is loved. Because I don't know your son, but I can say, hey, Phillip, thanks so much for all you're doing to support him as he goes through this journey.
Absolutely. Now, my son's journey is a little different. A little snippet there was that he didn't go in until he was an older soldier. He went in at around 25, turning 26. He'd done a number of things that he tried, out here, but he also knew from my military background and from my brother's background how we had utilized the military to better our lives. One of the things
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people who don't serve understand is that when you go in the service, you learn about discipline. You really
Mm-hmm.
do. You learn about appearance.
Mm.
Your military uniform has to reflect the United States Army and or whatever component of the service that you're in, and you need to look your best and you need to perform at your brightest level. And they demand that of you, and then you begin to integrate that into your own way of acting. And so when I came out of the service, I was able to get all kinds of opportunities because people respected that I had been
Mm-hmm.
in the service. Oftentimes interviewing with executives who they themselves had not served, but could recognize the service either from their own parents or relative, and they reflect on who that person was in their life, and
Right.
that would be extended to me. And so there were tremendous rewards. So my son got to see some of that with me. And my father, having served so long, he'd come in and he'd check things to see how well you did it. No, great
Mm,
job. Especially if it was the
right.
kitchen area, things like that. He wanted
Oh
to
yeah.
detail properly. And so I learned all those skills, as a young,
Mm-hmm.
some men's, I go to their house and like, there's no cleaning lady here. No, obviously, so I learned how to do I'm talking about as a young man, but I all that came to me through the military. So my son saw all that. And I said, why don't you come back and stay with me for a year, train since you want to go in to be he's a, what do you call a 187th Airborne Air Assault guy. I said, those guys
Wow.
train. Why don't you come in and watch the videos? It's all online now. He did it, got himself in superhuman shape. And then I knew he was mentally and physically prepared because he did it for a year and he's excelled in it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that doesn't mean he doesn't still need that support. And so
Exactly.
with our siblings, not everybody is reaching out him the same level, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are siblings who of my aunts and uncles who were reaching out to him and let him know that he's loved and cared about. And so I think that's really important. When it comes to them being veterans,
Yes.
when I got to a certain point in my life, uh, I will say when I got out of the military, one of the things that I made myself do was learn what rights and privileges, quote, entitlements, but sometimes that sounds like a bad word depending on who you're talking to.
No, I think that because you're entitled to certain things because of the service that you've done. So I think that that's a great word for it. And tell us about the entitlements that.
Okay, so when you're a veteran, you come out, there's a whole set of regulations and laws that the Veteran Administration, in terms of care, mental health, physical health, opportunities with education, opportunities for rehabilitation,
Mhm.
opportunities that if you had a career and you were no longer able to perform in that career and you wanted to go do something else, there are opportunities through the Veterans Administration where they will re-educate you and they will let you go get a university degree if that's what you want. In my case, for example, I just graduated from Pepperdine University's executive with an executive graduate degree
Oh,
in their
congratulations.
IMBA program. But that was all facilitated by something called the Veterans Readiness and Employment Act that the VA allowed me to take advantage of. And so I was very familiar with the rules and regulations about how to go about that. These programs are there, but they're convoluted. They're very difficult to understand sometimes. And there are different service organizations out there to help veterans. The problem is, and this is where I come in, this is where individual people, loved ones, and anyone who's listening to this podcast wants to figure out a way, how can I give back?
Hmm.
You should know that there are many veterans, particularly in Southern California and Santa Monica, where I'm at, that are homeless, that are out on the street. A lot of times you can look at them and tell they're just homeless. It's not that they're crazy, just that they're 2 weeks away from a paycheck, lost their job, lost their apartment, car, and now they're on the street. So for some of those guys, I and others will go out and get them and try to have a cup of coffee with them, try to meet them a couple of times. And then when they're ready, I'll say, hey, you've told me a little bit of your story. Maybe I can help you. I'd love to take you. How about going down sometimes I'll say you can go down to the Veterans Administration, but they're intimidated. They don't want to go. They talk about those people. They've had interactions with them. They don't feel confident. They just need somebody to go in there and hold their hand. So in those instances, I've actually
Okay.
taken veterans to the VA. One
Hmm.
instance, I've gotten a person in. They got the mental health care they need because they were on the point of potential suicide.
Hmm.
Within 90 days, they were in an apartment. They had help with their rent. This individual's gone out and has written a book. He's now made a
Oh,
movie. He's now getting the Joe Biden presidential award shortly. I won't name him here because I want to let him do that when he does it. You can go out, you can participate. It doesn't require a lot to help someone and take them to the VA. In my
so is
case,
that, yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but like
no,
homelessness is prevalent so much right now. Like every city that I have been in the past year, I haven't traveled that much before that, just during COVID, but coming back and I go into downtown Indianapolis, downtown Denver, downtown Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, all of these places. I mean, the homelessness is such a big issue right now. And as you've mentioned, it's so many veterans. And I don't want to say, is it as simple as just saying, hey, can I help get you a ride to the VA? But is it really just as simple as that? Or do we look at love as the answer? Do we find out, like, can I just take someone to the VA? How does that work? Do I need to
In my
call?
case, as I am a veteran, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't just, it doesn't happen like immediately. Like I don't run around and
Right.
just pick up everyone. I start having an interaction with that individual,
Okay.
have a conversation. There's a couple of people, I actually buy them food every single day. Like I give them some money to go buy food, or I deliver food. If I had some leftovers at a place that I know that had really good food, I put it away, make it look like hey man, these are leftovers. You want them? Some of them don't even want to take it, but generally there's a buddy or two standing there. Little things like that, acts of kindness
Okay.
toward another human being goes a long way. But where you can get to know the individual, which I have,
Mm-hmm.
um, I then this person I'm talking about, it didn't happen the first time I said, hey, let's go to the VA. He didn't want to
Of
do it.
course.
He was down on his luck. He was about to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
He shared that with me. And I said, I'm telling you, and his wife, by the way, this good individual was married uh, um, and had gone through cancer and all that. All that got worked out and sorted out because we were able to get him down to the VA. He was able
Mm-hmm.
to be much more supportive and be there and, for her, and then the other thing that you can do with veterans is my number one thing just in my normal interactions is I'm talking a lot here, but when I'm with them, I try to let them tell me their story and without
Mm-hmm.
judgment. I suspend any
Yeah.
judgment about a person's situation because you just don't know what they've been through and you don't
Right.
know how that impacted them personally. And so to be effective, the most important thing you can do with a loved one or anyone is let them know that they've been heard and that there's no judgment here. And so that's the most to me initially, being able to care for a veteran. I worked with another guy a couple of years ago before I started the Pepperdine program, and we did these things called love gardens. So I would go in, especially during the pandemic, a lot of elderly people couldn't, they were afraid to go to their garden because of their COVID. They have these
Mm-hmm.
here in Santa Monica. So I volunteered to go in and tend to the gardens. And occasionally I would get a veteran who wanted to come
Mm-hmm.
along and try to help. So this other individual I knew wanted to do this thing called Love Gardens. We're still got a proposal into the city gardening planning committee to do these love gardens. But that's another thing where you could take someone who has PTSD, because for me, I
Mm-hmm.
partial farm at 22 acres. I learned what the value is of touching the earth, being in the
Right.
land, walking barefooted. People don't understand sometimes that's
Moving your
transformative.
body,
Yeah.
just getting out and doing something in fresh air,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And for veterans, again, it's just another extension letting them know that you care about them and that
Mm-hmm.
you recognize we're all human, but you've been through a situation potentially, particularly if you've been in conflict, where your reality is nowhere ever going to be what someone's reality is that hasn't had that. Your memories, your experiences, your triggers are so different. So there are professional organizations out there that assist these veterans. So my main thing is if you have someone and you want to know what you can do to support them is to be there for them, listen to them,
Listen to
uh,
them.
and
Can
we'll
you
get
ask
better.
for can you ask for letters back also as they're going through things? Like I know for you, clearly writing is important for you and sharing information. Both, I mean, you're great at speaking as well. That's why you're on all of these podcasts. But
I
I
don't do a
wonder
lot of that. Yes, I do.
but but I wonder if, as they're deployed, can you ask your loved one to just journal back to you? Is that
Well, what,
helpful?
what I don't ask, people will tell you I'm guilty sometimes because I don't like to ask.
Okay.
I like to facilitate by my actions. If I said to you, one of the questions you had in your questionnaire, let me jump to that for a second. This is good dovetail. You ask, share an experience where you were helped as a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came out of I was married, not my son's mother, but I've been married twice in my life. But my first wife and I, who I love dearly, unfortunately, in her family, there was a particular type of cancer called cervical cancer that ran in like her mother had it, her aunt had it, another
Mm-hmm.
relative had it. So it ran in their family. She developed this cervical cancer. We met in the Army. We got married while we were in the Army. We were sent to Europe. And while we were there, I was injured just before I left, just doing something not combat wise, but I ruptured my pectoralis major. So they sent me back to Washington, D.C. And while I was there, she was diagnosed with cancer. So they sent her
Oh.
back to Washington. And we ended up being both discharged from the service because of the nature of
Mm-hmm.
our injuries that we had. But hers was much more severe. They gave her less than 85% chance to live. She did survive, but she had to have what is called a radical hysterectomy. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time in 1982, 83, when they did that, they really didn't offer much counseling for either she or I.
And that's a pretty big thing.
It's a pretty big thing because it actually, in some ways, and I would say the most significant way, since she couldn't have children, I was 23, she was 20, I think she was 21. Okay. So she
Wow.
couldn't have children. So it was like, well, why
Wow.
stay married? She went through a deep depression. I went through a deep depression.
Of course.
And the way someone helped me was my elder sister and then her husband later came and stayed with me during that time
Mm-hmm.
because me and they cared about me and they could see the impact this was having on me, from a mental state of health standpoint. I remember my brother-in-law bought me a bicycle, a Schwinn bike, uh,
Mm-hmm.
kept for 25 years. It was finally stolen out of this place where I'm at now.
Oh
But I had, for so probably 40 years, something, but I had it for a long time. But
no.
that
Mm-hmm.
bike, I started riding it and those endorphins started kicking in
Mm-hmm.
and that improved my mental state. And I was able to get on with my life and do what I needed to do. Um, I became a federal agent. I was already a federal agent, but went through this,
Sure.
difficult time. So I'm just saying that's my own personal story of someone coming and doing something and being able to help me through a traumatic experience. Anytime you have an opportunity to listen to a loved
Mm-hmm.
one without probing, and that's where I was trying to go with this, without probing and pulling and just
Mm-hmm.
listening and maybe sharing a little something from your own personal life, which then
Mm-hmm.
makes them feel safe,
Sure.
that they feel they can reveal to you what happened. Because that's what I did with that veteran that I ended up taking in. I had to
Mm-hmm.
tell him, but I go to the VA too. Sometimes I
Right.
need to go to the VA and talk to someone, and it's not a bad place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you might not get the first person that is, suitable for you, but you will get the
Right.
person you need to talk to, and they can get you on your journey, and they will hear your story.
Yeah.
And so that's how I do it. I don't try to probe too quickly because
Sure.
it's like, who are you and why, and then
Right.
sometimes people ask the question, it's hard for them to suspend their judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's
Yeah.
a mental health issue, because they look at you and they'll go, "I got you look great to me. Why don't
Right.
you just go get a job at Whole Foods? They're hiring down there." And
Oh,
it's
sure.
it's not quite that simple for someone, in that situation. You're
Yeah.
so listening is key.
Listening is key. Well, you said something that made me think as well, and that was that riding the bicycle got your endorphins going again. And I know how important exercise is for my own mental health. I mean, there's tons and tons of research around that. And when you're serving in the military, like your body is in tip-top shape, right? And you are used to putting your body through a lot. Those endorphins are going all the time. And
Yes.
then I have to imagine when you get discharged or when your time has been completed, whatever, like you don't always continue with the same level of physical activity. Um, so I wonder if even just asking someone, hey, do you want to go for a walk?
Well,
You
that
know,
helps too.
And
That the way
everyone is different, right? But I'm just saying, like, what can you do? I love that the bicycle was so helpful for you, right?
yeah.
And I'm sure that's something that you had a connection with a bicycle anyway, I'm sure. And you had a connection with your brother-in-law who gave this and gifted it to you. But I like the reminder of getting those endorphins going again.
Yeah, so anything you can do to help with it, like I know in my case, I am a person, I'm a lifelong I'm 60, I'll be 65 March the 12th. And no
Congratulations.
one looks at me and goes, God, you look 65 years old. And part of that is because even though I have, I have joint, very severe joint issues with
Mhm.
because I played sports all my life. I'm getting ready to get surgery on my right hip for total replacement here next month.
Oh my
But that
goodness.
said, I'm still not sitting around and not doing
Right.
anything. I work out my upper body with weights and I use a methodology that causes my heart rate to raise up considerably.
Hmm.
Not if I was running, but still something, right?
Right.
To keep myself active. And then I watch what I eat. And that's the other thing I work with people about is their diet is so important in terms of what you eat. I don't drink
Mhm.
alcohol, I don't do drugs. And I also, lots of fruits, vegetables, nuts, berries, and chicken and
Right.
fish. That's my, like
Well,
my routine in terms of health because it stimulates your mind, it keeps you healthy. And so the last
right.
final point I want to say about questions, though, it's offer an opportunity where you could share something
Hmm.
not too personal, but it's just enough that it creates an opportunity for them to share and for you to listen.
Right.
And the
Yes.
next week you gather the information, and once you have enough, you can, like in my case, I talked to someone at the VA. I let them know I want to bring this individual in, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And they were very welcome to it. He still had to wait in line like everybody else,
Of
but
course.
his name was called. I was there with him. He got in there. He was so transformed when he realized, like, hey, help is here, you know? And so that's what's
And
important.
and you were sitting there with him, right? It's reminding also that he's not alone
Yes.
and you are there.
Yes.
So that's such a nice um, gift of your time and service to help someone who's going through something else.
Yes. Well, one of the things that we realize in life, as you get older, but sometimes if you hear it, like for those that are listening now, I want to remind you that the biggest gift you get is when you give.
Hmm.
The satisfaction, the joy of knowing that you made a contribution to help someone else without necessarily expecting something in return, but you do get something in return, and it's private, it's internal to you. But there's a something that says to get more than you give, you got to give more than you get. So there, it sounds tricky,
No.
but it's true. And so our veterans have done what many out here were not prepared to do. They were prepared to make the sacrifices, some cases
Yes.
on the battlefield,
Mhm.
but some cases, in both cases, if they are on the battlefield, being away from their families and their loved ones and the things that they may necessarily want to be doing out here for our country. And
Yes.
I always respect men in uniform. I respect the veterans who have already served.
Hmm.
And I recognize that our greatness as a country has been, to a certain extent, um, the fact that we were prepared to defend our way of life, both home and abroad, if need be, our vital interests. And so the
That's
people who
such a
go through
heavy
that,
mental load,
yeah,
right?
it
Like
really
that's
is.
such a heavy mental load and a heavy mental load for their immediate family as well,
Yes. I
right?
mean, with my
Like,
son, I only have one child, right?
mhm,
So I think about, could he end up in harm's way, potentially. But
right?
what I am satisfied with is that our army is the finest army in the world. They
Yeah.
do every single thing they can to um, make sure our soldiers are the elite soldiers of the day and are prepared to go to win.
Hmm.
And that's not to say the Army or I keep saying Army, and forgive me, the Navy, the Air Force, and all the services. I'm talking about all of you guys because my dad was Marine Corps. He used to call them
Okay.
when I could tease him, I could say jarhead, and he'd look at me like try. So, so, but the truth is, he inspired me. He inspired my other siblings in that regard to go serve. So I just think it's really, 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 really important to recognize that a lot of the joys and the freedoms that we have in this country, if you haven't been abroad, you really appreciate them when you go other places in the world, and you realize
Yes.
we're pretty lucky to be where we are in the world, superpower, capable of defending the nation and our allies when need be. And so,
And that comes with a huge sacrifice from
yes,
people like you, your entire family. And thank you for that. And making sure that the rest of us who are not in that space can be as supportive as possible.
absolutely.
I
It's a
really
commitment
appreciate
they
that.
made to us,
Hmm.
and we owe them the commitment,
Yes.
right? There's a commitment there. And somewhere during Vietnam, and I respect those that protested that war and the reasons that we went to war, but that has very little to do with those soldiers who come home
Right.
from that conflict, who were doing the service of their country,
Hmm.
following the orders of their immediate superiors, and ultimately the President of the United States, the Commander in
Right.
Chief. Once they get back home, we have to embrace them and let them know that we love them, we care about them, and get them whole. And when they're
Yes.
ready and they can start processing
Hmm.
the ramifications of decisions that were made that were beyond their capacity to really do anything about as a soldier, they
Right.
can come to their own terms on that if, in fact, they're given the opportunity, if you will, to heal, to to be replenished, right?
Hmm.
And you'll meet soldiers who were in Vietnam who recognize what happened there, but at the same time
Sure.
are proud they served, are proud that they did what they had to do when they had to do it,
Hmm.
and leave anyone behind, right?
Right. Right.
So, right, so that's what I would like to communicate to anyone that's listening, in terms of, if you need to find some motivation about why you could take the time, when you make the time, to go do and serve others that
Hmm.
are veterans, or reach out to the current soldiers,
Right.
that one event that you might go to that you say, you know what, no, I'm going to put away some time each week or every other week where I do these activities for veterans and for my own loved ones, to let them know that they're thought about, they're cared about. And you got texts, you do have that. But to me, I always like to pick up the phone at some point and hear my son's voice. And when I hear that voice, I can hear it in the ear, where
Uh-huh.
he's at, what's going on. He has a girlfriend right now. They're potentially going to get married, and or they had a disagreement, and
Uh-huh.
what do you think, Dad? And I always
Yes.
let him say, "What do you think?" Then what I like to do is turn it into a question. So that's another thing I like to say is, rather than me coming from a place of wisdom, been there, done that. Let me just
Right.
say, my been there, done that is to say, ask the question. Well, when that happened, how did that make you feel? Get him talking.
Get
Do
him talking.
yeah. So again, communication, right? Because that's what
Communication.
shut down those veterans, right? When they go. So if you can
Well,
establish why they're in, communication.
yeah. Well, and remembering that communication for their entire family, right? So your son has a girlfriend now. That's really congratulations. Sounds like you've got a lot of fun things ahead. I have friends whose spouses are currently serving, but that means that they're on a base far away.
Mhm.
And for instance, one of these friends, she just had a baby and she's stationed in Hawaii, and none of her family's out there. And her wife's serving and gone for weeks at a time.
Right.
So trying to like send the text when I do see her on Zoom or something, checking in to say, hey, you're serving too, right? Like this is a big
Right.
sacrifice to allow part of your, like your spouse is out there You have no contact with them. I'm here for you also.
Right. But you know what? For your friend, to the extent that you're capable of doing it, if she just had a baby,
Hmm.
there's not enough diapers, right?
It's
Like
yeah,
a care pack of diapers, you could order, like everything's online now. So it's like,
everything's online. Uh-huh.
and they always allow you, is there a note? You can put a note if depending on who you use for that. Or you can just send it and let her know that when it came, that, hey, I just want you to know you got to pack it down. Oh, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to do
I know
anything,
I
girl.
don't have to.
Right?
Uh-huh.
But little tiny little incremental things like that. And so, and by the way, my soldier, he does the same. I'm wearing right now. I'm gonna pan for a second down here. See, can you see my shoes?
Oh, those are fancy.
Okay, they're the Michael Jordan shoes. I got them a couple of months ago, but out of the blue, he
Oh,
sent
he did
those.
the same thing.
Okay, so
Oh.
he's like, I've got tennis shoes. Like he knows I need another pair of tennis shoes, really. But you know, but I didn't have this pair, and and I love them, and because they came from him, and
There's another
so it's a
connection, right?
two-way street.
Yeah.
And so I always like right now, like, so this coming, is it this week? Yeah. So next week I will send him a little money. He doesn't need it, but I'll just do it
Mm-hmm.
just because, and it won't be much. But it's like, I don't know, it's like Christmas if you had $100 note, right? Out of
Right.
nowhere. Hey baby, let's get tickets, for his girlfriend or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
like little things like that. So I just think that your girlfriends or your friends, the ones that you love and care about, in terms of immediacy, if you know their spouse is serving, that's where you can help them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're down, they're missing their person in their life, and they just want to talk or vent a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let them have that moment, right? Let them
Yeah.
have that, and
Yeah.
and don't solve the problem for them. You
Nope.
can't, but you can listen to them.
I can be there to listen.
Yes.
Well, Philip, I have two questions for you as we round out our time.
Okay.
And you've touched on one of them, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to the other just based on our conversation. Um, and that is when you have a loved one or friend or someone who's going through some personal crisis, what is your favorite thing to do for them?
After listening,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
depending on what it is. So my favorite thing would be to suggest we do something.
Mm-hmm.
So um, if it's a woman sometimes, and it's not someone I'm dating, so right, this is a friend,
Right.
um, I'll try to tap into something I know they like to do. Let's go to a gallery.
Yeah.
Let's go. So and so's having a little gathering. I'd love to have you come. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. I try to find something that I know they enjoy doing. Sometimes, which I'm really kind of have a gift at, is I can sneak in the attaboys or attagirls that I'm aware of from their life,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, shore up any feelings of negativity or that are just compounding whatever's happening right now.
Sure.
So and just letting them know that I'm there for them. Because one of the things that we forget when we live in a big city is that community is very hard to maintain. I go to the same coffee shop every day in the morning, even if it's just for a short period of time. And sometimes I'm tired of that coffee shop and going there for a long time. But it's that sense of community that the people that come there, that we get that little moment to see a regular familiar face. If someone's sick or ill, we reach out, we check
Right.
in, make sure they're okay.
Right.
And if someone passes, there's a lot, I do things around that as well.
There, and then you
Remembering,
can support each other.
yeah, and support each other. And that's because in big cities, that's one of the things you quickly realize. It's like, you may not even know your neighbor across the street,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been living here and seeing them, hi, hi. and it's
Right.
very difficult sometimes to get through that barrier. So if you have a local place that you can do that, I foster that. And then you get to know people when something's going on, you have that support
Yeah.
mechanism.
I
So
think that's
yes,
wonderful.
you had another
Yes.
question, I
I
think you
have
said.
another question, and actually, this is a question that um, I usually ask at the beginning, but I was so excited to talk to you. I'm embarrassed that I didn't ask it at the start. And that is, as I'm sitting here in my kitchen, the reason we've started the podcast is because for me, when something major in life happens, I call my friends and we sit in the kitchen and we kind of discuss what's next. And this is where our little community tends to start. And I'm wondering if you have a moment that is your kitchen moment that you're willing to share. And it might
Um,
be what you already shared.
you mean in terms of where someone came and helped me, or just a?
Yeah, like a time in your life where you were like, I'm gonna need to rally the troops. And I think it might actually be what you kind of shared already about with your first wife. I mean, that was
Well,
a pretty big moment.
that was one that happened in the 80s. And I can't say
Hmm.
enough in closing that as I began the Pepperdine journey, to go for a graduate degree at 63 going on 64 years old. A lot of people had questions like, well, why do you want to do that? You're almost at retirement age anyway. And I got some of that. And then I got a lot of support. And I can't believe you have the energy, to go back to school to do something like that. So I got that. And I just want to say that it was so transformative to, and I'm still opening up to all the possibilities that come when you expand your mind and you expand your knowledge, and you can see the possibilities that could potentially be there for you. Not seeking them, not grasping for them, because that's
Hmm.
another thing. As soon as you do something like that, people say, "What's next?" It's like, how about processing what we just did, appreciating what we just did? Graduation's not to April anyway. That's,
Right. Yeah.
embracing. And I can't tell you how wonderful that is. So, any veteran out there who listens to this podcast, make sure you check out, um, particularly if you have a rating of 10% or more in terms of a disability, the VRE program, Vocational Readiness and Employment. And
Okay.
for those of you that are veterans that have that and have not used your GI Bill, you want to use that VRE component first, because they require that you use it first before using your GI Bill, because then you can't go back and switch to that new program. They were in the process of talking about changing that law. I don't believe it's changed yet, where
Okay.
that's not going to be the requirement. But I do want to throw that out there to veterans who are right now maybe sitting at home or listening to your podcast and wondering, like, well, are there things out there for me? And explore those things. Don't be afraid to ask your disabled American veterans organizations, the American Legionnaires. They know about these programs. Make sure you go get the help and get some of the questions that you might have answered.
And
Again,
that your
and I'm
friends
Phillip
and loved
Sheppard.
ones want to help you too.
Exactly. And everybody wants to see you succeed.
Yes.
Um, most people want to see you succeed. Shouldn't say everybody, because I don't know
Well,
you,
right.
but
But most people want to see you succeed and want to help facilitate even just finding that information for you,
absolutely, absolutely.
because that's something that I think can be helpful.
Absolutely, Aimee. It really can. It really transformed my life. And as I say, with different veterans organizations that are out there, if just because you might go into one or you have an interaction with someone at that particular place that didn't suit you, don't give up. That's
Don't
the
give
other thing.
up.
Persistence is so key when you're trying to achieve a goal, and that applies to yourself.
Yes. Well,
Commit.
Phillip, it has been such a pleasure to have you on, to have this conversation, to learn more about how to support veterans and those who are currently serving, and especially those who are in basic training as well. Thank you for all you do for veterans, and as you continue to grow and learn and share with everyone.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye, Aimee. Take care, everybody.
Bye.